All right, hello. I was speaking with a friend, a trainer earlier on, and what we were talking about, or what I raised and wanted to have a chat about, was how there is so much information around. It's nigh on impossible for your average dog owner to make a decision based on information drawn, certainly from the internet, but from studies or from books or from opinions of professionals or from what you see, and to actually come to a conclusion without there being a ton of evidence to the contrary, conflicting scientific studies, differing expert opinions and all this sort of thing. It's very, very difficult for most people to reach a decision for a course of action, take it and stick to it. And I was given an example, or the example that I gave was in respect of thinking so deeply, or not massively deeply, but going into, how will the animal perceive it, what should the consequence be, what can I expect as an outcome thereafter, for dealing with behaviours as they present, and how that can form a real stumbling block for a lot of people, preventing them from moving forward. And the example that we gave, or the example that I brought up and we discussed, was about a dog which snaps towards hands. Either bites, nips. I'm not talking about puppy nipping, I'm talking about a dog that will give a grumble, a snarl and a reactive pop towards hands. Now that can be because the dog is what you'd term to be dominant and it likes things done on its own terms and it always has done, or it could be because the dog is fearful of hands. I know the approaches might be slightly different, but ultimately for the purpose of this discussion they're similar. And the example that I gave was, if we have a dog and we say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to counter condition the growling behaviour in the dog, so the fear or the I'm going to use the term dominance, all right, because it's what's everywhere, so I'm going to use the term dominance, but what I'm talking about is the dog that is intolerant of attention, intolerant of touch and fuss, if you like, based on what it wants rather than the fact that it is afraid of. Okay, so it's something that it wants to happen when it wants it to happen, and at other times it'll deal with it by way of aggressive response. And let's say that we have a dog in front of us and we're going to smooth the dog. So we're going to teach the dog, say we put a muzzle on it, a basket muzzle on the dog, and we're going to go in and we're going to smooth the dog down and we're going to touch it around the neck area, around the collar area, which is an area of control for a lot of dogs. For a lot of other dogs, it's an area where they may have been grasped or pinned down or held by owners as a control measure. But obviously dogs within dogs as well. The neck is an area that is obviously used a lot of the time for control and for submission and the assertion of superiority within group, within a hierarchy. But that aside, let's just have a look. And so we have a dog presented, and the dog doesn't like hands coming towards it. So what we're going to do is we're going to smooth the dog, and immediately as the dog allows us to touch, we're going to present food. Okay, so we're going to smooth, and whilst the dog is allowing the smoothing, we're going to present food. Then we're going to withdraw it, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to smooth the dog, we're going to present food, and then we're going to withdraw it. And we might end a session there, and we might bring a session on another time, we might repeat, bring a dog session on another time, repeat. At some point, it is guaranteed, virtually, in fact there's no even virtually, it is guaranteed that what the dog will do is regress to its former behaviour. So it will either snarl, snap, attempt to bite, growl, start bark, whatever. It will respond aggressively towards that situation. And the question is, what do you do? So I'm smoothing and I'm presenting, and I'll explain why it is a question of what do you do. So I'm smoothing, I'm presenting the food, and that's all great. And then all of a sudden the dog starts to snarl. Now, obviously, I'm going to take away the food, right? Because there's something really wrong if I'm saying, hey, it's okay, don't worry. And I'm feeding the dog whilst it's snarling or whilst it's growling. That's not going to happen. So that's a given, is that the food is withdrawn. But what about the hand? What about the hands that's smoothing? Do I keep the hand on there, despite the fact that the dog is giving me feedback that it's unhappy and that it's liable to show aggression towards me? Do I remove the hand? In which case, what am I telling the dog? I'm telling the dog that your aggressive response has just resulted in the removal of the hand, which is what you wanted to happen. Thereby, I'm reinforcing or rewarding both the display in the first place, so it's more likely to occur. Do I mark the dog with a no or at, or whatever somebody wants to use as their corrective term? Do I mark the dog as it growls or goes to aggress towards me? If I do, what am I going to do? Is that it? Am I going to back it up with anything? Let's say I do. Let's say I back it up with a punishment. And it's going to be a physical punishment, is it? If I'm this close to a dog, then obviously I'm going to take hold of the dog. I'm going to give the dog some form of physical correction. Looking at the physical correction, let's say that that doesn't work. What happens now? Do I escalate? Do I go in? How high is too high? Do I go in like a ton of bricks? Do I rain down on the dog like a ton of bricks and really, really physically correct the dog? And let's say that that doesn't work. What do I have now in terms of that dog? What is that dog prepared for? What has that dog learned is a possibility? What might I have to accept I'm going to have to deal with? What if it does work? What if I come in on the dog so hard, or you know, however I happen to deal with that dog in terms of a physical punishment results in that dog suppressing its aggression and its reactivity towards me and my hands? Am I now in a position where I'm able to say that my dog is, I'm going to say cured. It hasn't got a disease or an illness, but let's say cured. Let's say that my dog is, what's the other thing that I hear all the time? Rehabbed, right? Rehabilitated. Love it. Let's say that my dog is now rehabilitated. Is it? Can I have my neighbour's 5-year-old daughter come over and take hold of my dog's collar? I'm sat outside of a cafe and somebody walks over to me and says, that's a lovely dog, and bends down to stroke the dog's. Is my dog now no longer going to aggress towards anybody else in any circumstance? Can I consider my dog to now be safe? If I can't, what's the point in me doing it? Particularly if it's not my dog. If it's somebody else's dog, what is the point in me demonstrating by a strong physical correction a dog that sort of like submits to me and then giving it back to them? But if you look at it, this isn't a criticism of anything. It's not a criticism of punishment. It's not a criticism of counter conditioning where a fear is concerned. But it's looking that if you go into it and you get to a particular point, you're going to come to a point where there are lots and lots of ideas that come in, you know, and opinions that come in, and studies and evidence that comes in to support that this would work because, or this wouldn't work because. And it almost comes to a point where if you're an average pet owner, you would read this stuff and you find yourself in this situation, you think, shit, do you know what I mean? What am I supposed to do? I don't want to do that because that might happen. And what if I do that and then it does this to this person, and am I to blame for that? And it becomes a real mess. And I just think it's interesting. Has anybody else ever found themselves in the position where you have so much information and so many different people saying so many different things that it's almost easier to just avoid, manage and take no action than it is to deal with the actual issue that presents itself before you? And I say it's just a question. It's not a preach or anything like that. It's simply a question to see if anybody else has ever found themselves in that position and what your thoughts on this particular topic may be. So for that instance, there's always comments enabled on the videos anyway. I don't block them, I don't disable comments, but hopefully there should be, you know, quite a nice discussion develops off the back of it. I don't know, maybe not, maybe people will think I'm talking shite, but we'll wait and see. Thank you.